Hello guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to be creating a CRUD app using Next.js as the front end and Express and MongoDB on the back end. So the first thing to get started, I want to create a directory inside anywhere. So it could be on my desktop or a folder. In order to do that, we could do mkdir and call this node CRUD. Then we're gonna go into that directory that we just created. So cd node CRUD. Now we're inside the folder nocrud. I could just open that up to show you. Now we're going to create two more folders. One's going to be for the front end, which is Next.js. So we could do mkdir client and mkdir server, which will hold our backend. So now we see these two folders, and now we can open up our code editor. I am on Windows, but Mac should be almost the same. So now I'm going to drag my VS Code on the window that you guys could see. And I'm gonna give you a rundown. So CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. It's pretty basic. So if I scroll up here, you can see create adds new entries, read retrieves, searches, or views existing entries, update edits existing entries, and delete removes existing entries. We will be using Next.js for the front end, and then Mongoose cores Nodemon, Express, and .env for the backend. And this is going to be a simple no app. So to get started, we're going to start with the backend. So we're on our VS Code here. So I'll make that a little larger. And we're going to type cd, since we're in the main directory folder, node.crud. We're going to go into our we're going to cd into our server folder where our backend will be. So we could do server, cd server. So now we're in our server folder, which is inside our nocrud. And to get started, we're going to do npm init-y, which will initialize package.json. So now if I open up the server folder, we can see this package.json, and this will hold all our dependencies and our scripts. And I'll explain what each dependency does once we use it. So what we could do now is in the same console with the server directory open, we're going to type in npm install. We're going to install Express, and in this case Express, so let me open this up so I can explain it better. Express will be the backbone of our backend application. It will handle income requests and manage data flow. So next we're gonna install Mongoose, and Mongoose is responsible for interacting with our MongoDB database. And then we're gonna have cores, which will be the communication between our front end and back end. Then we will have Nodemon, and this will be helpful for it automatically refreshing whenever we save our backend. And one more, we're gonna have .env, which is gonna be so it's gonna keep our sensitive information secure. Now once we have this installed, so we can wait for this. And for now, I could just close this, make this a little bigger. So now that we have all our dependencies installed, we are going to start with setting up our server. So now in our server folder, we're going to create a folder called server.js, and this will be our main file. And one thing before I do start typing inside our server.js, I want to go back to our package.json, and under scripts, I want to just type dev, and we're going to implement the Nodemon. So in parentheses over here, and not in parentheses, in quotation marks, we could have Nodemon and then our file name, which is server.js. We don't need the extension. Now if I click Control Save and we write npm run dev, we should see Nodemon has launched. So now we go back to our server folder, and up here to get started, we would want express, initialize express. So we do const express is equal to require, and we want the express library, just like this. So now if I save this, Nodemon will automatically check for any errors. Then under this, we're also going to use cores. So const cores is require cores. And in order to implement our .env, so let me just open up my web browser here, go to the npmjs.com website, and go under .env, and in order to use this, we're gonna, oh, I'm not sure why it's like that. We are going to use this. So as early as possible in our application, we're going to import and configure .env so we can use it. And the command for that is require .env, and it will be .config, just like this. So now we're going to save this. And I'm also going to open up MongoDB, so we can set that up right now. So open up the website, go to mongodb.com, sign in. I will sign in right now and then show you guys. So waiting for it to sign in. And let me just create a new project. Oops. So what I basically did is, let me just go back one. I went up here to where all my projects are, and you can see this is a previous, but I was just testing. So now we're gonna click new project. In the project name, we could write CRUD notes. Click next, create project. Wait for that to download, update. We're gonna click create a new cluster. We're gonna use the free version, M0. We could leave this the same, or you could change it. And click create deployment. So after this, we are going to get this pop-up, connect to cluster, or our name over here, cluster 0 in this case. And we're gonna copy this password, and in our server, we're gonna create a new folder called .env. And for now, we can just comment the password, so we have it. So now we're gonna click choose connect or create database user, and choose a connection method, and we're gonna click on compass. So now we can just keep that to the side. I'm gonna open up our VS Code a little bigger, and now let's configure our express. So to get started, we're gonna do const app is equal to express. So now our app will be whatever the express gives us. And before we do create our routes, we want to use the cores. So we could do app.use cores, just like this. And we also want to get app.use express.json. So our server is read in JSON format. So with these two, now we could create routes. And we're gonna create every route in this page, but later on we will have a different part where we refactor all of the code to be in different files, like the routes file and etc. So now to create a route, we're gonna create a test route here, or actually we're gonna start up the server. So in order to start up the server, so start server, we will need to use app.listen, and over here we're gonna input the port. So we could do 8000, and this will be listening on port 8000. So localhost.com and then colon 8000. But I don't want to show this 8000, so we could put this in our .env folder or file, and we could type port equal 8000. Now we can use this port. So in order to use it, we type process.env and then the name, just like this. And we can also input a callback here. So we have a console log. So we do console.log server started, and for now we could just see if our process.env is working. So process.env.port. So as soon as I click save now, we should see server started, but it's saying undefined. Process.env.port. Save. And I click save. Oh, one mistake I made here is where it says required.env.config, we should have parentheses in the end like this. Now if I do save this, we do see the 8000. So I can move this console log all the way to the port and just click leave state server started. So now, actually before we create the routes, let's just connect to our database. In order to do this, we could do it right here by copying this string. So let me just split it. So we could just copy this string and put it over here. But what I like doing is having it so it's in a different folder. So in our server folder over here, directory, create a new directory called connect to db. And inside this connect to db, you have a folder or a file called connect to db.js. And up here we are going to, now we will use Mongoose. So this is Mongoose, and this allows us to connect to our database easier. So we are going to use this mongoose.connect. So let me just go on the Mongoose website, like right here. Now what we're going to do is going to be an async function. So we're going to have a wait mongoose.connect. So up here to get started, we're going to do const mongoose is equal to require mongoose. So now we could use the mongoose library package, and we're going to create a function over here. So function, or you could just do const connect to db is equal to async. So create our arrow function here. Inside here we could have await mongoose.connect and our URL. So I'm gonna put this URL that we get from Mongoose, MongoDB. I'm gonna copy this over, go to our .env and type db underscore URL, which is gonna be equal to our URL that we get from MongoDB. which already has a password, but just in case it doesn't have the password, so if it's looking like something like this, so if something like this, we're just gonna replace this password with the actual password. So just like this, we can remove this comment now and save this. Make sure you're saving. And now inside this await mongoose.connect, we could have process.env.db underscore URL. And now we're gonna export this function, so we can use it anywhere. So we do modules.export, export, or it should be modules.export. So module.exports is equal to connect to DB, just like this. So now we will be able to use this anywhere. So I'm gonna close this file up, go back to our server, and where it says connect to database, we could just type connect to DB, just like this. But we want to import this. So what we're gonna do here is const connect to DB is equal to require, and then where it's coming from. So dot slash connect to DB slash connect to DB, just like this. And also to see if this actually worked, I'm gonna go back into our connect to DB file, and inside the function under it, I'm just gonna have a console log of connected to database. So we can see it actually connected. So if I do click save and look at our terminal, we do see the connected to database. So it is working in our server. So now we are connected to our database. Now if I go to browse collections, we don't have anything. So we will create that right now. So we're gonna go back to our server. Now we're gonna start creating the routes. So in order to create the routes, we are gonna create 4 routes here. So we're gonna create a new node. We are gonna fetch all nodes. I'm gonna fetch a single node, and we're going to update and delete a node. So we can do update node and delete a node, excuse me, just like this. So I'm gonna start with the create a new node since we have nothing in our database right now. So in order to do this, we will need so let me just create with so we could do app.post, and the post method over here allows us to is for creating. So if I go back to our CRUD Wikipedia, we could see that create is a post or put HTTP method, and get will be read, update will be put, and delete will be delete, just like this. So we're going to do app.post to create our node. So now we're going to have the URL where we want it, so the endpoint. So we're going to have slash API slash notes or slash note. And this basically is saying, so if I go back to my browser, it is basically saying localhost HTTP TP slash localhost 8000, since 8000 is our port we specified, and this is going to be slash API slash node. So whenever we do post to this URL, it will create a node. So if I were to type something like slash API slash node slash create in our URL over here, we'll have a slash create. So this will come in handy when we're using it in the front end, but for now you could just look at the basics just like this. So now I'm gonna keep it to /API/note, and the second parameter will be our async request and response. So req and res. And then we're gonna use the arrow syntax, curly braces. Inside here, now we want to have a try and catch block. It's always good to use this. We're going to console log the error, if there is any error. And so now inside our try block, we are going to get request of body. We're going to create a new note with this request, and then we're going to respond with the note. So in order to get the request off the body, right now we don't have any model. So we're gonna go back to our Mongoose, and we want to create a schema. So in order to create a schema, we will, in our server folder, we're gonna create a new folder called models, just like this. And inside our models directory, we're gonna create a new file called notes.js. And the schema is basically the structure for how our data will look in our backend. So as I do it, you should get a better understanding. So now up here, we could initialize our Mongoose library. So Mongoose is equal to require Mongoose. Now we're going to use const node schema. So now we're going to create our schema is equal to new mongoose.schema. And now inside our curly braces, we could specify what we want. So our note will have a title, and this will be a type string, just like this, and required will be true. And we're also gonna have a description. So description, and description will be a type of string, and required will be also true, just like this. And we're also gonna have a created at, and this created at will be just a timestamp, and this will allow us to filter our data later on in the front end. So the type of date and default will be date.now, just like this. So now this is our node schema, so I'll have a title and a description, and also specify the timeline which it was created at. So now under, we could just const note is equal to mongoose.model, and this will be the name, so note, and this will come from note.schema, just like this. And now we're going to do module.exports, and it's going to be equal to note. So we could use this note schema anywhere in our server directory. So this is our model. So now, since we have our model, we want to get the request off our body. So in order to get the request off our body, we are going to do const and destructure the title and description, and this is going to be request body, just like this. So rec body. So now we're getting the title and description of the post method. Now we want to create a new note with it. So in order to create a new note, we're gonna type const note is equal to await and this will be node.create. So we want to get this node. This node will be coming from our model right here. So now we want this model, so we import it. So up here we could do const node is equal to require, and now we're gonna find our model inside our models folder slash notes, just like this. So if I do save this, now we have this node model, and we do node.create, just like this. And inside this node we will have a title, and this is going to be matching whatever we put here. So we'll have a title and description. So we're going to have a title and a description. And now we want to respond with the node. So we could do res.json and node. So now that is it for creating a node. And in order to test this, since we don't have our front end yet, we're gonna use something called Postman. And allow. So I'm gonna delete this, and we'll just oops, delete, and we're gonna create a new request. So let me just close all of this, close and close. So we're gonna create a new collection, blank collection. In this collection name we could just write CRUD no YouTube, and we're gonna add a request. So we're going to use a post request since we are creating a new node, and Postman allows us to test our HTTP methods here, our requests. So this request will be create a node, and the URL over here will be http://localhost 8000 slash and slash API slash node. So slash API slash node, and we're gonna have a body since we're gonna be getting this off the request.body. The title and description, we want to specify that over here. So we click on body, we click on raw JSON, and now we want to just make a dummy JSON. So we're gonna have a title. So title, in this title we could say first note, comma, and then we're also gonna have a description. So description, and we're gonna have a description of first note description, just like this. So now if I do send this request to localhost 8000 slash API slash node, everything should be working and we should see no error in the console. And the request should be 200. So if I do click send, we did get a 200 OK status, and we do get the title, the description, and this ID is provided by MongoDB, which will be helpful for the later fetching a single node, updating a node, and deleting a node, since we will use this ID. And then we have this created at, which is formatted in this way, telling us when it was created, the time, the date. So now to make sure this has been created, we can also go back to our MongoDB, and we click on database, we click on browse collections, and we should see a notes collection, and with our first node created. So that was for creating a new node. Now we're going to fetch all nodes. In order to fetch all nodes, we're going to use the app.get request, and this would be slash API slash notes. Now I'm adding an S in the back since we're fetching all the nodes. And the same thing as the create, we're gonna async. We're gonna get a request and a response. And now in here, we want to find all nodes. And one thing I didn't explain is this dot create. So let's just do the find all nodes first. And in order to find all nodes, we are going to be using this Mongoose methods. So if you go to, I think it might be connections, or maybe not connections, schema types, nope. So let me go down a little bit. What should it be? Should be model. Okay, so these are all the requests our models have. So we have this create, which will save one or more documents to the database. So now we're gonna use find method, which will find all of the all of the data inside our Mongoose. So for here, we're gonna find our nodes. Want to Then we're gonna respond with the node. So in order to get all nodes, we're gonna do const nodes is equal to await node dot find, and this is finding all the nodes. We can also have a filter in here to find by ID or by the username, email. But for now, we want to find all nodes, and then we're gonna respond with the nodes. So we could do res.json notes. Now I could save this and no error in the console. So now if I open up our Postman again, now we could create a new let's create a new in order to create a new one, we will create a new request. So add request, and this request will get all notes, and the link to this will be slash local http slash localhost 8000 slash API slash notes with the s in the back, since we specified this in our backend. So now if I do click send, let me bring this a little to the left, and if I do click send, we shall see our first note, our one and only note. So if I do click, we do see the single note. But let's say if I create another note, so let's create another note. So this could be our second note and second note, and for now, and we click send, it should create our second note. So now if I do get all the notes again, so if I send this request, we should see two notes in our database. Now this is working. Now we want to fetch a single note, and in order to fetch a single note, we're going to do app.get method, and inside here we do slash API slash note. Since we're getting a single note, so it'll be note. You can name this whatever, but I just like doing it this way. And then slash note, and to get a single note, we're going to be using that ID, which I told you MongoDB makes on its own to specify which note we want. So we're going to do app.get slash API slash note slash, then we can use this colon and ID, and this basically means, so let's just go back on our Google. So we have something like this, and this basically means if I wanted to get the first note, so if I wanted to get this first note, I want to get it by this ID, since all these IDs are unique. So I'll copy this ID, and if I put it at the end of this, it will will be this ID. So this ID will be dynamic. That means, so this should give us that first node. If you guys don't understand it yet, you will as soon as I finish this request. So now let's go back to our VS Code, and we're gonna do app.get to fetch a single node. We're gonna do app.get slash API slash node, and then this colon ID. And this is gonna be async. We're gonna have a request, a response, and then inside here we want to get the ID from the request body, and we want to get the nodes linked with the ID, or the node linked with the ID, and then we want to respond with it with node. So in order to get the ID from the request body, we want to do const and the G structure ID from the rec.params. So this basically means if I did have a request, so if I go back to our Google here, if I did have a request over here of slash, and let's go back to our database, copy this ID. So if I did make this request over here, it will basically take the params right here, rec.params will take this ID at the end, which we specified over here. So we'll have this. So the console log of this ID should be that. So you guys will understand it more as I do it. So now, so we're getting the ID now, and to get a single node, we're gonna use a HTTP method. We're gonna use a method from Mongoose. We're gonna use the find by ID, and this basically finds a single node by its underscore ID field. And we would need the ID for this, so that's why we're getting the ID of the params. So now we could do something like this. So const, so now we're gonna get the node linked with ID. So now we could do slash node, or const node is equal to await node dot find by ID, and this will take the ID as a parameter. So we can just type ID since we have specified the ID over here. And now if we respond with the node, so res.json node, if I save this and we go back to our postman and we create a new request over here, so create a new request, so add request and fetch single node. The URL over here will be slash API slash node and then an ID. So slash node and then slash the ID. So this ID I am copying from so if we go back to our get nodes, let's say I want the second node, I'll copy this underscore ID and go to our fetch single node and let's paste it there. Now if I do click send, we should get that second node. Let me just make this a little bigger. Now if I click send, and we did get that second node, and we could do the same thing to see the first node. So if I do go back and copy the first node ID, and we go to our fetch, our new fetch single node get request, and paste that ID in there and click send, we should see our first node. So now we have our create a new node, fetch on all nodes, and fetch a single node. Now we want to update a node. In order to update a node, if we go back to our Wikipedia, to update, we're going to use the put to replace. So we're going to use the put method. or HTTP method here. So let's make it so it's easy to read. Make our VS Code a little bigger. So now we're gonna do app dot put or put, and this put will be on slash API slash note slash and then the colon ID. And this colon ID could be is dynamic, like I said. So now we will update based on which ID we input here. And in our front end, this will be dynamic. So we'll have it so it's dynamic. And you'll understand more as soon as I do it. And now this will have async. This will be async. Ooh, just like this. And we're gonna have a request, a response. And now in here, we want to get the ID from the params. We want to get the note with the ID and update it. And then we also, once we update it, we want to get the updated note. So get the updated note. And we're going to respond with the updated note. So in order to get the ID from the params, we could do const destructure ID from request.params. Now we do have this ID. And so whatever we type over here, so if it was something like this ID will be equal to this ID, which we are getting from the database, automatically created. Now we want to get the note with the ID and update it. In order to do this, we want to use the, so if you go through the methods here, we should see find by ID and update. So this is going to be, for this we're not going to do a const note is equal to await. So actually I will do it and then show you why we're not going to do it. So we do const note await note, so our model dot find by ID and update, and inside here we will have the ID and then comma whatever we're going to update. So we're going to update the title and the description. Oops, title and description. And one thing I forgot is, in order to get this title and description, we want to get the title and description from our body. So slash, so we could do const destructure title and description, and this is going to be from the request.body. So just like this, now we have our title and description, our current title and description. So for example, this will be so open our postman. This will be our first node and our description, our current first node and description. Now we want to update. So this is just gonna update the title and description as we send a request to this put. So now, for now, we're just gonna leave get the updated note. I just want to show you what happens. So now we're just gonna respond with an updated note. So now we could do res.json note, which is coming from this const. And if I do save this, open our postman, let's make it a little bigger so we could see the sidebar. Oh, for some reason I can't see the sidebar. Oh, there you go. Now we're gonna create a new request in here. So add a request. This is gonna be a put request, which is updating. And this is gonna be on localhost AP. So let me just type that in: http // localhost 8000. slash API and whatever we specified here. So it's slash API slash note and then the ID. So slash note and then the ID. In this ID, you could get all requests. And let's say I want to change the second note and to say maybe second note updated to the title. So I'm gonna copy the ID from here for now, since we don't have a front end. And we're gonna go back to our put request and we're gonna type in this ID and we're gonna go in our body over here and we're gonna specify the new data. So we're gonna create this JSON. We're gonna have a title here. So title. And this title will say updated note 2, updated second note. And I'm not sure if we got. Oh, I mean, it should be updated first note. So we'll do updated first note. And I'm also gonna change description to updated description for first note. And if I do send this request, so if I do click this send, we don't see the update or over here, even though it has updated in our backend. So if I go to our backend and I do refresh, make this a little bigger, I do refresh this, we should see updated first note. And in order to fix this, so let me open this up again on the side. Oops. So in order to fix this, we could just get the updated note. And in order to get the updated note, we could remove this const note from here, from the when we're updating it. So we could just remove this. So now it will just update it. Then we're gonna do const note is equal to await note dot find by ID. Since now we could find so since we're gonna be using the fetch a single note, so we could get the updated note here. So we're gonna await note is equal to await, or const note is equal to await note dot find by ID, and then over here it will be the ID, which we are getting from the request dot params already. So now that should be it, and now this note will be the updated note that we get. So now if I go back to our postman and let's say I update the first note again. Oh, it actually should have been second note. So let's say updated second note, updated second note, and I'm doing second note because we did write first note even though we already had a first note. So let me go back. We have our first note here, and then this should have been our second note, and I wrote updated first note. Now we're gonna just change that because it's a mistake. So we're gonna do updated second note and updated description for second note. So now if I do make this request, we should get the updated note over here in our body. So if we do click send, we should see an updated version right here. So now that's working, and I can show you it worked. So if we go back to our database and click refresh, we should see updated second note and updated description for second note. So now we're going to delete a note. In order to delete a note, we're going to use app.delete. And if we go back to our CRUD, if we use the delete, we can use the delete method to so if we go back up here, we should see that delete removes existing entries. So in order to delete a note, we're gonna do app.delete, and we're gonna have it on /API /note and then the ID. We will need an ID for this because if you go to our Mongoose over here, you could find by ID and delete. And for this, we will need the ID. So app.delete on slash API slash note and then the ID over here. And this is going to be a async, a request and response, which is going to be, which we will need to get the ID from params again. And then we're going to get, oops, it should be a comment. And then we want to get the note by ID and delete it. And then we're going to respond with the note. So now we want to get the ID again. So in order to get the ID, we're going to do const ID structure ID, which is going to be equal to rect.params. And now, since we get that, we had the ID. Now we can do const note is equal to await, and then our note model dot, and we are going to use that method find by ID and delete. And there are multiple methods, like I showed you before. We could use any of these. And for now, just for our simple CRUD app, we will use find by ID, find by method, or find by ID, and delete, find by ID, and find, and also create. So right now we have const note is equal to await the note model and to find by ID and delete. So this will take in the ID of ID, which we're getting for the request.params, just like this. Oops, just like this, whatever you specified here, and we're gonna respond with it. So we do res.json, and say you're getting an error and you can't figure out what it is. It's probably because you don't have it configured up here to use JSON. So make sure you have this line right here. So app.use express.json. Now let's go back to our delete method. So now we do res.json and then we're gonna respond with that note. So now this is our CRUD, and let's see if this works. So let's go back to our Postman. Since we don't have, we're using Postman since we don't have our front end to create these requests, and it's an easy way to test. So let's create a new note over here and write temporary note. So temp note and then temp note description. So now if I do send this, it is created with the 200 status. So now we could get all the notes. And now we should see this temp note. So I'm gonna get this ID from the temp note and oh, it just update. So this will be updated, update a note, and this should be a put request. Let me save all of this and close it so it's easier. Now we're going to create a new request over here. So add a request, and this will be a delete on http / localhost, and make sure it's http and not https. So that could be another error you guys be getting. So /8000 or 8000 / API, and what do we specify here? /API / note and then the ID. So /API / note and then the ID, and let's get all the notes again. So send this request, and let's say I want to delete this temp note. So I will get the ID of this temp note and type in our delete request ID as an ID. Now if I do click send, we should see if we go back to our get all notes and click send again, it has been deleted. So yeah, everything is working, and in the next video, which is part 2, we are going to implement this CRUD into our front end Next.js. Even though in Next.js we can use server side, but I do like using Express. It keeps me in loop with it. So for now, let's just actually install the Next.js in the client folder. So we're gonna open a new terminal, and we can do cd client now. So I close the server, and we can do cd client. So now we're in our client folder, And let me close this a little bit, minus this. And let's go to a Next.js website. We're going to get started. And what we're going to do here is, I like using Tailwind CSS to implement my Next.js. It's the same thing if you use next npx create next app at latest, but this will just give me Tailwind. So if you click get started, framework guides, Next.js, we're going to use this command here. So we're going to do npx create next app at latest, and this is going to be, so now we got to specify directory, so we need to do it in our current directory, so we can use a dot slash, and then we're going to use TypeScript. Even though we're going to use no TypeScript, it's going to be all Java JSX, and ESLint, ESLint, just like this. And if I click enter and open up our, it will ask us if you want to use Tailwind CSS. We click yes. Do we want to use the source directory? I want to click no. You could use it if you like. I just like it without the source directory. And to use that router, yes. And then import default aliases, no. Now it is downloading everything. Now we just wait for this to download. And then we can set it up. So then we will paste our next command over here. So we're going to install Tailwind CSS, post CSS, and auto prefixer, just like this. And then we're going to install its init. So we're going to initialize it. And now it's saying to go to our tailwind config.js. So we see our tailwind config.js here. And where's our content, we're going to update it to whatever we see in this highlighted area. Control S that, make sure you guys are saving. And now if I do write npm run dev, this is hosted on localhost 3000. So if I go to localhost 3000, oops, and we do see the Next.js is running. So in order to get a clear boilerplate, we go into our app folder here, and we go to our page, which is our home page here, and we're going to delete everything in our main folder, or in our main element here, our tag. So delete everything and specify that main element again, or tag again. So I'm gonna type main just like this. I'm gonna close the main, slash main, and inside here I have an h1. So if I do save this, actually we see nothing, and I'm gonna specify a temporary h1. So h1, and I have slash h1, and inside here we write home page. And now if I do save it, we should see the home page over here, text homepage, and we're getting this black background because if we go to our global CSS, we're going to remove everything we see here except for the top three, the base components and utils. And if we save that, Control S, we do have this boilerplate now. So now in part 2, we're going to implement whatever we created in our CRUD. So our create a node, fetch all nodes, fetch a single node, update a node, and delete a node into our front end Next.js. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video, and yeah, don't forget to subscribe and like. Thank you.